So, Preez is a white, liberal, apologetic journalist whom what so hell-bent on getting to the so-called super moral superiority, the kind of liberals who think they know what's good for black communities. He talks about how when he talks to black people first, he has to explain himself that he's a white male Afrikaner who's then willing to listen because he doesn't understand black experience and what we all have been going through.
So it's something that is worldwide, and I think we should accept that as a phenomenon. We should look at people in our society with our past and say, I face the fact that you are black, that you have a black experience, that you do a black tax, your families, you have memories, your parents suffered under apartheid, and that makes it different from me, a middle-aged white Afrikaner male. I totally agree with that, and I'm prepared to say, okay, I will factor all those things in, and you will factor in that I am a white, privileged Afrikaner male who benefited from apartheid, which I did. Greatly so. I've never been hungry, never been without a job, never been not have clothes. I'm a beneficiary.
Okay,
And there's where he talks about sacrificing democracy, by changing laws in order to suit other people. For example, he had an article where he said that Jacob Zuma should come up and apologize, admit that he's wrong, and then his guiltiness then be washed off so that he would then become a president. So in other words, you have to change the law to appease an individual. See what I mean?
And that is where you and I fundamentally disagree. Because I don't think that subverting the Constitution will make South Africa a better place.
How would you subvert the Constitution?
By saying not all people are equal before the law. If you are the president, you can get away with corruption, you can get away with state capture. We'll pass a law indemnifying you to make you go away.
That's just a pragmatic way to avert a disaster.
No, there was no disaster. We didn't do that, and there was no disaster. The disaster of state capture had already happened by the time you wrote that. No. It is done and gone and established. The disaster that is Eskom
When
was
are you saying did I write this?
I would say in around 2017.
But he was kicked out of office in 2017.
Yes. It was in the run-up to him being kicked out of office. It could have been 2016.
No, it was much earlier.
All right.
Much
we'll
earlier.
see. We'll see. You wrote two columns in which you were saying, for pragmatic reasons, let's subvert the Constitution because black people aren't going to like it if we uphold the Constitution.
Nonsense.
You did.
No,
you
nonsense.
said that if we press charges against Jacob Zuma.
Come on.
Well, I'll put it up. I'll put it up on the podcast.
No,
so
you
that
can't
people
just
can see.
make up stuff here and it's on television.
I'm
And
not making it
I
up.
said because he's black.
No. You said because people wouldn't like it. The ANC wouldn't like it. The Zulu supporters of Jacob Zuma wouldn't like it.
But that's not the same thing.
That's
I'm
playing to
saying
identity politics.
I'm obsessed with one thing in our society, and that is whatever we do, we should not lose our fundamental stability. Because I've worked in societies where stability went and then democracy just went out the window. With our history and makeup, stability is a very precious thing. And I'm getting very worried because as I came here this morning, there were more looting in the streets. It's kind of early signs of lawlessness on a mass scale. And I think that is something we should guard with our lives. And sometimes we should be pragmatic and say, what should we do? Should we remain pure and see our democracy go down the drain? Or should we perhaps be very considered and sometimes say, is there some pragmatic deal we can do to avoid instability? And
The foundation of our stability, Max, is our Constitution. The foundation of our stability is the rule of law. What you were proposing, in my view, was to say, let's abandon that. Let's throw it out the window because pragmatically, in the meantime, it might contain some risk of instability.
yes.
But in the longer term, it would fundamentally undermine the core principle that
But we
everyone's
would do
equal
it
before
in
the
a
law.
constitutional way. We wouldn't just do it by decree. We would go through Parliament. We would make a law. It would all be inside the Constitution. The Constitutional Court wouldn't kick it out because the majority in Parliament said that.
And it's just a whole range of crazy talk, you know. He purport to be the legit mainstream media because they are subjected to the media tribunal. So on the social media, the social media is not that important. People who are on social media are not important. He's more important than them.
You keep on hopping. Are you a special category? Are you a special category?
That's what
And
you're
you don't-
asking for.
and
But
you
let's not
don't
go back
feel-
to the court
And
case.
I don't want to feel, we're special. But there is kind of something like a tiny little bit special because we are the mainstream journalists, those who are subjected to the press council and the press code, those who, they recognize not social media. Those people are a critical element of our democracy.
So
And it's so funny that because of his Trump derangement syndrome, he once retweeted something from Professor Jansen, who's also suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. And I just replied to him and said, hey, I've watched Donald Trump's speech, the whole entire speech. He has never said such word. Okay? And then he eventually blocked me, because he doesn't have a backbone. If you see his profile, he says he's a writer, a publisher, a public speaker, but clearly this is a public speaker who now, I guess maybe he also would want then for the social medias now to only have them certified journalists to speak on the social media. These are the kind of people who are now would be happy with censoring individual people's opinion because the individuals are winning the information war against this appeasing journalists. There's where he purport his sweet love to Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
That's who they
why
are.
did you support Cyril Ramaphosa so strongly then and say, I know he's got the background, he's got the muscle?
I still think he's our best hope, given the current circumstances, to get out of the mess we're in.
And
I have been supporting him quite strongly. I've known him since 1983. When I was at the Financial Mail, he was with NUM, he was organizing CUSATU,
And you went to
get
Anglo-American
together.
and you both had a talk there.
and we went to Anglo-American, we both had a talk there. Thank you for reading my book so well. And I always had a gut feel that he's a man of integrity. And what I saw then and I saw between 90 and 94 was a man of steel, a clever strategist, quite ruthless on occasion. And I think he's lost that. And that's what money does to people. He's out of his depth in terms of the dirty politics of Ace Magashule. Cyril has to make some extremely unpopular decisions that CUSATU, the Communist Party, the EFF, the Magashule faction will hate. And if he can't push through with those, we will end up in a position where we have to ask the IMF for funds, and they will prescribe, they will give preconditions that will take our sovereignty away.
In fact, Helen Zille calls her out on that, say, hey, I know you met Cyril Ramaphosa in the 80s, the Anglo-Americans, and he starts saying, yeah, I love Cyril, he's a good guy, and it's just trying to be a bit tougher by saying that, but he has to take on the factions of Ace Mahashule and so forth. In other words, he, like, in a way, indirectly encouraging Cyril to get dirty as well in the faction, so that Cyril can come up on top, you know, and take over. So it's just been interesting, and also he was called on as a journalist, you know, because he was one of the journalists with SANEF. I think it's the National Editors Forum, South African National Editors Forum. They took the EFF to court, claiming that the EFF is threatening them. You know, essentially they wanted to say that as journalists they are way too special. They're not supposed to be criticized. You know, the sweethearts. Oh, do not criticize us. We are there. We are the Alpha and the Omega. We are the mouthpiece and the loudspeakers of truth in holding the politicians accountable. Oh, love us, crap like that. You know?
You wrote something on Twitter which I found astonishing, saying you hoped that SANEF, and I as one of the journalists in that court case, would lose the court case.
I didn't say that, Max. I said you were wrong to take the case. I didn't say I'd hope you'd
He
lose.
said it would be a bad day for freedom of speech if we
Yes.
won.
It would be a bad day for freedom. It was a bad day for freedom of speech that you took the case.
Yeah, but also that if we won, it would be bad.
So I think it would be a very sad day if journalists were to get themselves defined as a special category of person under the Equality Act that is entitled to more protection than other people. I think that would be entirely wrong, and that is what you're asking for in those court papers.
And he also talks about how he doesn't love the stem in the national anthem, and then Helen Zille calls him out on about BEE and says, Max, you wrote an article about the Afrikaner leaders whom, when they build the industries, the economies and so forth, the very same economy lifted up even the poor Afrikaner communities, and said that you were also saying, how come the African National Congress doesn't have such strategies in their BEE that would then uplift the poor as well, instead of having all these 5% stakes in all these giant corporate companies of only politically connected politicians, of which obviously essentially, if you take all the politicians as maybe corporate companies and so forth, you take all these top 50 best politicians, cut them the slice of 5% of all these businesses, it makes them be quiet, be dull, be sleepy, and not obviously at the end of the day look at the interest of the society as a whole, you know. Yeah, so this is the same story, you know, with all same liberal professor like Pierre DeVos also, you know, white liberal, apologetic. Let's all give our riches and hand them out to the poor black people so that we can have equality, you know. It's never about an issue of saying, hey, give those folks a fishing rod, show them where the places where there's like a fish run, where they can, in fact, we just have to put their fishing rod away, get their big nets and net the fish for themselves and be able to preserve that fish for a long time, and teach their offsprings also to have that mentality of knowing how to fish for themselves and not just going to get those tin stuff on the shelves and so that they can provide for themselves. No, it's not that. It's welfare. It's the same thing where the ANC government will take pride in saying we are now having more than 18 million of our black people in the community who are getting welfare checks, welfare money, the SASA, and so forth. Instead of saying that we're very sad that we had an increase of 1 million more people who are going to get free stuff from the government, of which the society which is getting taxed is getting smaller and smaller, and it's getting more overwhelmed. And the taxes, your VAT is on 15%, and this is going to increase more. Let us come up with solutions where we're going to put people back to work. Let us come up with regulations that will going to make it easier for small businesses to thrive. Let us make sure that small businesses are always the economy that's always coming out, hiring people on the regular. I think over 60%. Let us make sure that during this time of this invisible virus, we're going to make sure that we're going to give financial relief to all those small businesses quickly. We don't want them to log on to the website. When they try to apply, the website crashes. We're going to make sure that when we're on even level 1 and when everything is back to normal, those companies are standing. But unfortunately, it's not happening. It's the same mentality of patronizing the black communities, that you cannot be able to build business on your own. You know, we can acknowledge the evil of the apartheid system that has happened to us as the black community, but on the other side, we should not lose focus and track of being able to come up with solutions that will make us have the apartheid, the economic participation, discrimination of the past to be something that we'll be writing about in the book, where my grandchild, okay, will read this in the book, where they would then be in a situation where they're having opportunities to have their own businesses, to thrive in this republic. And this is what we should strive for, and not what we're seeing now. Because I'm sick and tired of all these liberals always coming through claiming to be superheroes for us, blindsiding us of the fact that we can be able to go out there and attain our dreams. See, so yeah,
To just do the basics. For me to go to an EFF rally, I can't now.
You
The last-
can.
no,
Come on,
the last
Max,
time I
you're
was-
not a chicken.
The last time I was there, the police had to rescue me.
Max,
That's in my court papers. You should have said. You've seen
I
that.
did, I saw them. but
Yeah, when I was there, they would have killed me if the police didn't stop them. So how can I go
well,
to
I'll
the...
go there
Well,
and cover them.
and what if they mob you and start
I've
beating you
been
up?
mobbed a few times in my life.
Well,
I've been shot
the
too.
last time this happened to me was with the AWB.
No,
When
they're
they
exactly
recognize
the
your
same.
face, you know, you have to be rescued by... And that's
This
what
is
I'm
a
saying.
tough neighborhood, Max. It's a tough neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if you look at my journalistic career, I've survived quite well in a very, very tough neighborhood.
Ditto.